Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the RDH Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Chad. Joined alongside me is my brother, Tanner. How's it hanging, dude?
It's good. It's really good. I mean, yesterday I got home from California. I was there. I was spending time with you. We went to go see a bunch of football games, and it was a lot of fun. That's kind of why our podcast was absent last week, if you really noticed. But we're back. We're back again this week, and we've got a lot of material to go over.
We got a ton, and yeah, like you said, we checked out the USC UCLA game. Did wear a Caleb Williams jersey there. If you caught up with that game, UCLA doesn't typically beat USC, at least these past couple years, and USC absolutely destroyed them. Caleb Williams had one beautiful 74, 75-yard touchdown pass. Other than that, he looked very bad, but that USC defense looked like a piece of wet paper. It was terrible. They couldn't stop anything. And then the Rams and the Seahawks, that was a thriller at the end. The whole game, the Seahawks were controlling the game, and then Geno Smith goes out there when Drew Lock has to come in and be the savior quarterback. But hey, they pulled it off. The Rams pulled it off, and we got to see a good one. But yeah, we got a ton of stuff to talk about this week. Have some I told you so moments in college football. We're recapping a little bit of NFL, and then we got some Week 12 matchup preview and picks. And for the listeners, we are doing a ton of picks this week. We're doing about 8 games to make up for the last week's episode, because like Tanner said, we were doing football. We were in football mode. A little bit of college football scout going on there at the USC UCLA game, so it was a good time. But jumping in to a little bit of college football talk, once again, our RDH Sports kind of called this one about right before it broke. Jimbo Fisher was released from Texas A&M with about $75 million left on the table. Oof, that one hurts a little bit. We have a former podcast host, Brad, who weighed in on this one, and I'm gonna read his text because he's got a really good idea about who the replacement could be. He said Mike Elko could get the call. He'd been doing good with Duke. We'll see what happens with that one. We could see if Brad calls that one. But the real reason I wanted to bring up old Bradford here is because this text. So apparently, Brad is a big UT guy. If you used to listen to Chad and Brad talk sports, big UT guy. Big A&M guys over here. Look at Tanner's shirt. You know what I mean? Both went to school there. But this is what Brad's saying. And we listen to Brad in college football. We listen to Brad. You know what I mean? So Jimbo, he said he had no friends left. Every single member of the Aggie brass didn't like him. And apparently he also no-showed the Texas High School Coaches Association meeting, which rubbed a lot of coaches the wrong way. And he compared Tom Herman back at UT to doing the same thing. And apparently that is a big recruiting train, and you do not miss that. And Jimbo missed it. And hey, thanks for that little bit of information there, Brad. But Tanner, what do you got to say about the release of Jimbo Fisher and $75 million left on the table?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of money left. It's not like what you want to see, especially from like a negotiation standpoint, especially with A&M and their, buckets of money that I guess they apparently have. Half of it's going to be going to Jimbo for the next however many years. I know, thanks. But it's just not what A&M wanted. Like when Jimbo came in, they were expecting a national championship, and Jimbo got kind of close one time, and it's like that's not what you want to see when you're the head coach of this, Texas A&M football team, because they have high expectations. It's kind of like the Cowboys, the Dallas Cowboys, in a way where it's like, it's Super Bowl or bust. It's kind of like the Aggies. They want more. They're in the SEC. They moved there for a reason, to be competitive. They want a national championship, and they haven't really been competing. And this season was no different. They suffered some pretty bad losses to teams they probably could have beaten. And, they're just not weighing up to the top competition. It's just they haven't really been since Johnny was here. And that's just pretty much, the bottom line of it. So they need and want more is kind of my biggest thing. And if you look around and you like kind of pull like the opinion of him in Aggie land, it's kind of like, you know what I mean? It's like he hasn't really done much, especially among like the student body. It's like we were kind of believing in Jimbo to be our savior, and nothing really happened. Nothing really changed. So like, what's going on here? So that's kind of like what it looks like from the inside, at least. From the outside, it's a very similar perspective. He's not winning, so get him out of here. But what did you think? I mean, I was kind of for it the last time we talked about it a little bit, but I didn't expect it to happen this soon.
Yeah, I mean the mid-season thing. I said it on the previous pod. The biggest thing right now, the reason I think they cut it early is because of the recruiting train. They can't afford to lose a ton of recruits with UT and Oklahoma coming into the SEC. I almost would have liked them to try to go one more year with Jimbo after this, just to not mess up the recruiting train. And already so many transfers have entered the portal from that great draft class that A&M had, just because it did not work out their freshman year, and now you don't know who the head coach is of the future. So it's not the best time in Aggieland right now, but like we said, A&M competes and they still have a large portion of that draft class, number one draft class that was a couple of years ago. But it's pretty simple. You bring somebody here to win, and you only have so long to win. Now, whenever we signed Jimbo, we meaning Texas A&M, because went to school there as well, and you were promised wins. If you look, they gave him a literal plaque with a blank national championship on it. So that one really didn't hold up that well. And when that's what you're expected to do, and it's not even the fact that he got close. He got close one season, and then A&M completely fell apart. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, yes, he got close, but at the same time, they completely fell apart. So really, at the end of the season, they weren't there. So Jimbo really hasn't had a successful season, other than the fact that he's pulling in recruits. But here's the thing: A&M hasn't had a problem pulling in recruits when they've gone to the SEC. Kevin Sumlin was really good at it, and Jimbo's really good at it. You know what I mean? But now when you lose a head coach, you see the lull of recruits that's about to happen for the next year to 2 years. How many of these quarterbacks stay? You know what I mean? How many new quarterbacks does A&M bring in? How many commits have already flipped? There's a lot of questions that are being asked right now. You know what I mean? So we're going to see what happens. But A&M it's pretty simple. They need to finish the season strong. They have LSU this weekend. If they can win that game and finish the season strong, then I think it looks pretty good in terms of recruiting, or not pretty good. This is clearly me being an optimist. Doesn't look very good at all, right? but you have no idea who's going to be brought in, and there's so many potential names in college football, and you're in the SEC, and you now guarantee a primetime game against UT next year. Every college coach wants that gig. Every college coach wants that gig, unless they're already, a Harbaugh at Michigan, or, a Dabo and Clemson. You don't really want to leave those story programs. Saban at Alabama, Smart at Georgia. You're not going to get any of those guys. You know what I mean? But there's a lot of potential coaches that are out there. That's my biggest thing, right? I'm obviously not okay with signing someone to a 10-year contract. When the Raiders signed John Gruden, I said it was a mistake. When A&M signed Jimbo, I said it was a mistake on this podcast for 10 years. I said there could be a national championship in there, but 10 years, baseball players don't even sign that much. They sign 9. You know what I mean? And that's the reason why you don't sign 10 years. If something happens on the off the field with Jimbo, which it never did, he just didn't win the game. You know what I mean? And that's what you brought there to do. Like, what happens? You know what I mean? The negotiations to me make no sense. That negotiation made absolutely no sense. Jimbo, hats off. You know what I mean? Hats off. Great negotiation on that part. But 10 years, 100 mil, 10 million a year. I don't know. You know what I mean? What happens if in 2 years your team's not that good? You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of what it seems like to me with what A&M did, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But here's the thing: you're still A&M. It's not like you're not going to get a good coach. You got a really good recruiting class. You got a really good team, and you're in the SEC. So I'm okay with it. I wish they would have waited a little bit, but I will be okay with it, more okay with it, depending on who they bring in. And now this whole coaching staff is scrapped. The whole coaching staff is going to be scrapped, depending on who they bring in, because they got to bring in their guys. So long-winded answer for you, but they got to figure it out quick. They got to figure it out real quick.
I think it's fair. Because I've seen like different head coaches being linked to A&M, and one of the head coaches I've seen is Deion Sanders over in Colorado, and it's like, well, if you're Deion, you get to go back play in Texas. You get to go, like you said, be a part of one of the biggest rivalries in college football with UT and A&M, and then it's like, he's on the national stage I would say a higher level than he was at Colorado, but I don't know, what the situation with him is, especially since his kids are there. But I don't know, in my opinion, I'm really just kind of like open for whoever the head coach could be in the future. I think A&M usually does a good job when it comes to finding talent. Does it pan out always? No, but we'll see what happens. But
Exactly. And my biggest thing is qualities I want from a new head coach is the one thing I did like about Jimbo was his kind of his attitude on the field. He got after his players. It's like that old school coach I love personally. As a fan, I like coaches like that more, but at the same time, you need somebody who's a quarterback guru. It's just that simple. That is the only thing, and Tanner, you've said it on this podcast many times, that's the one thing that A&M's lacking. You know what I mean? If you have a really good quarterback or you have a coach that can develop quarterbacks, that means you're going to get more quarterbacks from the transfer pool at a high school. You know what I mean? Recruiting-wise, you're going to get more quarterbacks. So that's my biggest thing. If A&M goes out and gets a new head coach and doesn't stick with who they got right now, which I don't think they will, no disrespect, but goes out and gets a new head coach, has to be offensive-minded and has to be very, very good at coaching quarterbacks. Enough about Texas A&M. We've got the biggest game in college football this year, this coming up weekend, with Ohio State versus Michigan, a top 3 matchup between these two. It's who Tanner's going for. He's going Ohio. I'm clearly going to go on the Michigan side. We just wanted to do this, just a surprise college pick. Surprise college pick. We don't do it a whole lot, but we're doing a surprise one because it's the biggest game of this year. I got Michigan. I think Michigan's the better football team, personally. But guess what? You got a kid by the name of Marvin Harrison Jr., and if he gets going, it's over. It is over. But you also have a guy on Michigan, Blake Corum, who they are going to ride this game. It's going to be a hell of a matchup. Why do you have Ohio State, Tanner? Tell me why you got him.
I think the big thing, exactly like you said, is Marvin Harrison Jr. I think he just has the ability to take over games. You've seen it all year long, and I think the kind of like the surprising thing about this defense or about this team too is their defense. You saw that Penn State game that was earlier in the year, and Penn State was a high team, a top team, and they shut them down for the most part. It was shut them down all game. And I'm not saying that Michigan's offense is someone you can shut down, but I'm saying that it has the potential to be a lower scoring game than I think people are thinking it could be. Because, like I said, Ohio State's defense, I think they've been playing up to a really good level. And Michigan, going into this game without Harbaugh is kind of worrisome. I know they've, been playing well without him so far, but you don't want something like that to be lingering over this game, especially in a game of this magnitude, especially with Ohio State, I'm pretty sure, being the higher seed. So that's kind of my thing. I also think Ohio State's quarterback has played really well this season, despite all like the rumors and like the things surrounding him and stuff like that, because it's like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? CJ Stroud is gone. Who's going to replace him? But he's played really well. And I think if they just lean on that defense, they lean on Marvin Harrison Jr., I think they can squeak out a win. I don't think it's going to be a big win, if Ohio State does win, but I think they can do it. I think they can hand Michigan their first loss of the season. But again, I could totally see Michigan winning. I'm not like an Ohio State supremacist. Don't get me wrong. Michigan has a great team, and they've been winning for a while now, especially with these guys that they have been playing. So I like Ohio State, though. Give me Ohio, baby. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, I knew you were going to go Ohio, which is why I wanted to pick this game. And last year, Michigan took them, but Ohio State in recent years dominated this matchup. They've absolutely dominated this matchup. So this year, I think Michigan could potentially be the favorites going into this matchup. Which, if I remember correctly, I don't even think Michigan was favorites last year going into it. And if they were, it was very very small favorites. Because whoever. Yeah, so but I think Michigan's at home this year, if I'm not mistaken. Right?
Yeah, they're at home.
Yeah, because last year was at Ohio State. So this year, that's why Michigan's going to be favored. Exactly. So you have Ohio State. If they were at Ohio State, they would be favored. If they're at Michigan, Michigan's going to be favored. It's one ranking. You know what I mean? One number that separates those teams. So it's pretty simple for my explanation. I think that Michigan is a more complete football team. I think that Michigan is a little bit better on the defensive side of the ball, and I think Michigan is a little bit better on the offensive side of the ball, with the exception of if Marvin Harrison Jr. gets going. If he gets going, like I said, it's over. If Michigan does not double team him or have safety help or have somebody chipping him on the line every single time he gets the ball, Ohio State will run away with that game because he can literally take over games. And when you're a top 5 wide receiver, most likely in the NFL draft, there's not many. There's not many in the NFL because what first round wide receivers historically have not panned out that well. Excuse me. Have not panned out that well recently, but this kid I think is going to, and he's going to be as good as his dad, who's Marvin Harrison. You know what I mean? He knows what to do. He's been around professionals his entire life. Go look at Marvin Harrison warm-ups with the Indianapolis Colts and see who's throwing the balls to the kid. Peyton Manning. Like the kid's been catching balls exactly. So it's awesome, and he's built for this stage, and he's gonna. This is the game. This is the game right here. You want to be a top 5 draft pick? This is the game to do it. You know what I mean? He's done everything he needs to do already. There's no boxes that he hasn't checked. There's nothing that he hasn't done, right? But has he beaten Michigan? Didn't beat him last year. He's got to beat him this year. You know what I mean? And this is a better Michigan team. They just don't have a head coach right now. Well, they do, but they just don't have their head coach that they have had, right? Because Harbaugh's not actually going to be there. So it is a huge game, and I cannot wait for it because this week we have Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday football, right? It's awesome. Thanksgiving week. We got a ton of football, and we're gonna get into it. But I can't let us get out of the college world yet without mentioning we've got a big game in Oregon.
We do.
We've got Oregon versus Oregon State. The Beavers.
Another rivalry.
Another huge rivalry. You know what I mean? Is Oregon State going to win? Probably not. But that's who I'm going to be going for. You know what I mean? We're going to Bo Nix can cap it off right here. Bo Nix can cap it off right here. Keep Oregon's power ranking, you know what I mean, in the top 5. Keep them there with a win over this week. With a dominant win, they could potentially move up more. And that's the main thing I wanted to talk to you about for this college football segment, because you and I on the way to the USC-UCLA game, we were talking about this stuff. Mm-hmm. What happens to this top 4 after this week? What happens? If Ohio State wins, what happens to Michigan? If Michigan wins, what happens to Ohio State? You know what I mean? There's so many potential teams that could pop up. Washington could pop up. Oregon could pop up. Texas could pop up. You know what I mean? What's going to happen?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I mean, we're going to have to wait till the selection show regardless, but with the Ohio State-Michigan game, like I mean, someone's going to move. You know, someone will move. So it's kind of leaving open spots for other people to come in. And who's it going to be? Is it going to be Washington? I think they're number 4 right now. And are they going to stay there? No, I'm actually looking at it. They're 5. Yeah, you're right. But are they going to move up?
You brought up a good point, though, about number 4. Yeah. Who's number 4? Florida State. Florida State, which
just lost their quarterback.
Exactly. Just lost their quarterback. So you've got 3 potential teams in the top 4. Mm-hmm. Well, realistically 2, because they're not going to move both of them out. One of them's going to win. So realistically 2. You've got 2 teams in the top 4 this weekend that could be out of the top 4. That's crazy. Mm-hmm. That's crazy, and that's why it is must-watch football this weekend. So now that's enough college football. We're jumping to the NFL side. We know what ton of fans. You've missed us for a couple weeks, right? We got some news to catch up on. If you're a fantasy football owner, you probably listen to this podcast, right? If you're a Joe Burrow owner, I would suggest to mute for about 2 minutes because I'm with you, right? I lost Joe Burrow as well this week on fantasy. I had him in 2 out of my 4 leagues. Yeah, shut up. It's because you're Cleveland's in the division. Don't do that shit. Joe Burrow. That's the Cincinnati Bengals. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? That's the Cincinnati Bengals. That division is now clearly the Ravens and potentially the Browns on an outside chance looking in. And it just sucks to see because this year going in, you were excited for the playoff matchup between these guys. You were excited to see Cincy in the playoffs, but now they're out. So what do you think about that division? It's got to be the Ravens, right?
I think it's the Ravens. Don't get me wrong, but I also, I think the Browns are 7-3. I think the Ravens are 8-3. So realistically, the Ravens have won one more game, so they haven't lost The Browns haven't lost any more than the Ravens have lost. So it's like it's going to come down to that at the end of the season, the matchups between the divisions. But the Ravens probably are going to take it. I will say they're just a better team. Cleveland doesn't have a quarterback or a running back, and they're going to pretty much rely on their defense for the rest of the season. And I don't know. You know what I mean? I think the AFC in general is just kind of wide open now because you have all these injuries, you have all these quarterbacks and big players going down. But the big thing about the Ravens is Mark Andrews is now out for the season as well, which is I think is another headline because, I mean, don't get me wrong, Lamar's receivers have been playing well, but it's kind of like a meme at this point. It's a joke. It's like, you know, Mark Andrews has been like the only person on that team for however long, but someone's in that receiver room or tight end room, I guess, is going to have to step up in Mark Andrews' place if they want to continue this domination that they've seen. So I don't know. I think it's a big question. I think the Ravens could. I think they could Lamar just take over, be like MVP Lamar, or I could see a world where that doesn't happen because I've seen them struggle without Mark Andrews before. So I don't really know, honestly. I would predict that they win it, but I don't think it's going to be by a lot. I think it's going to come down to the last week, and you're going to see, probably Lamar put up a really good game in the last week. But I really don't know. It's going to be a fun race to the end, though. I mean, Cleveland's never been this high up in it, and the Bengals are pretty much out of it. So
exactly, that's who I wanted to pull up who their tight end was because they just recently drafted a kid, Isaiah Likely.
Oh yeah,
and he's more on the younger side. Just recently drafted. He's very, very new in the NFL and definitely needs to work on the hands because you've seen him have some key drops already in his young career. But that's a player that if you could get going, that's a huge plus, right? Because you drafted him early in the draft, if I'm not mistaken. I want to say round 2 or 3. It could have been 4 at the latest, but he was a pretty high draft pick out of Colorado State, if I'm not mistaken. But he was a solid player. I think I had a 3.4 on him coming out of college, and this is what happens when you get drafted in college and the number 1 tight end goes down. You're thinking that you're going to be number 2, number 3 all year. Now you're number 1. And guess what? Lamar throws to his tight ends more than I think any quarterback in the NFL. Now it's Mark Andrews. You're not going to have the same thing with Isaiah Likely, but just wanted to bring that point up on there. Now, jumping to another team, second best team in the NFC record-wise, the Detroit Lions are 8-2. I saw a funny post. I think the last time they were 8-2 was when JFK was president, which is crazy to think about. Do I think that this team has a realistic shot to go deep into the playoffs? That's tough. That's tough because you have teams in the playoffs like the Eagles, like the Cowboys, and those are going to be potential matchups, right? You have those two teams that you're going to have to get through, and some other teams, obviously, but they're right now the second best team in the NFC. They have a pretty easy schedule compared to what the Eagles have and what the Cowboys have. So there is potential that the Lions could finish number 1 in the NFC. I'm not sure if that will actually happen, but it's very possible that they are number 1 and or number 2 if they keep up what they're doing. Here's the reason why I'm not 100% sold on them yet. And it's because of when you've watched the games that they're close in, it could go either way. You know what I mean? But at the same time, there are teams like the Eagles specifically last year and this year. Shit, look at the Kansas City Chiefs game that we just had last night. They should not have won that game. Mm-hmm. Kansas City had a literal drop touchdown at the end of that game, but the Eagles found a way to win. That's what the Lions are doing this year, and that's what great teams continue to do. That's my biggest question mark in the playoffs. Can they do that in the playoffs? Because the Cowboys can do that in the regular season. We know the Eagles can do that in the regular season. The Lions can clearly do it in the regular season, but what happens during playoffs, right? What happens? Do they pull a Chargers? Like the Chargers last year, they just show up to the playoffs and just be like, oh, wait, we're in the playoffs? Sorry, I thought it was preseason. That's my bad, right? What are they like in the playoffs? But the Detroit Lions are fun to watch again, man. They're extremely fun to watch again. They have a young offensive line, a younger quarterback, not really younger, and now he's a veteran in the league, I guess, showing my age. But it's a fun team to watch. What do you think the Lions are going to do? Do you think they finish number 1, number 2, number 3 at the end of the year?
I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, it's tough to say. Like you said, Philly has a tough schedule coming up, but I don't think that really matters. Like you said, we just saw them play the Chiefs, and they kind of looked like the better team in parts of that game, maybe not other parts, but they ended up winning, and I think they deserved it. They had a lot of really great drives against probably the best team in the NFL right now. And I guess they've been dethroned. Maybe they're number 2, but they're Super Bowl champions. With the Lions specifically, I think if they were to make a playoff run, if they were to get wins in the playoffs, I think they are built the correct way. And let me explain this, because, they're a run-heavy football team. They got, David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, and Jahmyr Gibbs is finally starting to spread his wings and fly. And David Montgomery, he's come back from injury, and he's still getting touchdowns, and he's still playing well. And they have Amon-Ra St. Brown on that offense, too, who is consistently putting up points. He's consistently getting open. He's consistently, getting touchdowns for this team. And Goff is playing at a really great level. You saw him against the Ravens specifically have a little bit of a stinker, but their stars were still involved, and they were still trying in that game, and they were still, at least looking somewhat decent. Because you look at the stats after that game, and it didn't look that bad, but they got destroyed. That's a bad one. But I think if they were to make a playoff push, this is the team that would do it. This is the team that would surprise people. I don't know if they're going to get the number 1 seed, because that would mean they would have to beat a lot of tough opponents, and I'm just not really confident that they can do that yet. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the offense is here for real, but I'm not putting my full trust in it. I think maybe Philly is probably going to get it again. Just looking at how they're built right now, they're extremely strong, and I don't really see them slowing down. But I like the Lions a lot. I think absolutely they can lock in that 2 seed. And not to mention their defense is playing really well too. Aiden Hutchinson is a beast of a man. So they have everything that they need to make a playoff run. I'll say we've seen worse teams make it and win the Super Bowl, before. And it's just one of those things. It could happen. It's all you got to do is get into the dance and give your team the best shot to win. And I think the Lions are absolutely doing that. And Jared Goff, he's been to a Super Bowl before. It's not like he's, a rookie in the playoffs. It's not like he doesn't know what to do under the bright lights. But that could also be said for a lot of other teams in the playoffs that he's going to play. The Niners, they've been to the Super Bowl with Shanahan. They've been in multiple NFC championships. The Eagles, they were in there last year, So it's going to be tough for him, but I think they have the capability to do it. Will they? I don't know. I really don't know.
Great take. Can't add anything to that because I completely agree with everything you said. I want to highlight a rookie right now who is not CJ Stroud, but is a kid that is probably number 2, if not number 1 in the rookie race right now. Being, we all know CJ Stroud's number 1, but this is probably going to be number 2 because of what he's actually doing this season. So Tank Dell, the wide receiver out of Houston, who is playing for the Houston Texans. I want to read my last year's draft recap on him. From Houston, like I said, I had a late second-round grade on him. Dell, he was Houston's offense, this being the college team Houston, not the Texans. This is a college scout report on him from last year. He had 152 targets, 1,399 receiving yards, and 17 touchdowns in his junior season. He was the entire offense of that team if you watched Houston play in college. Exactly. He's doing the same thing. Guess what? He was also a captain on offense. And you're seeing that translate. You're seeing the leadership ability, these young kids coming in with C.J. Stroud and Tank Dell, and they're just leaders of this team already. And that is why the Houston Texans are a scary team already. And we didn't think that would be happening. I wanted to highlight it because this line to me stuck out. Absolutely dominant player, ready to take on NFL defensive backs. Called that one. You know what I mean? I also gave him a late second, right? He got drafted in the second round, but I gave him a late second, right? Hindsight, probably should have been a first round grade. But still, not too bad. Last thing I'll say is he got a ton of wide open touchdowns. But when you go and watch the tape, not many are from blown coverages. Last line, I love the completeness of this player. So like I said, that was my scouting report of Tank Dell from last year coming out of College of Houston, getting drafted by the Houston Texans. But this kid's special. And I wanted to do that, and I wanted to go over his numbers this year. He's got 9 games played, 42 receptions out of 67 targets for 659 yards and 6 touchdowns. Oh, and he returns kicks too. He's got 9 games played for 100 return yards. So nothing too crazy there, but still he adds it. They also give him the ball a little bit in the backfield, so he's a little bit of a human human switchblade can do whatever you need him to do. Do whatever you need him to do. So just wanted to highlight him and call him out because, I mean, of course he's listening to RDH Sports. You know what I mean? Who's not, right? But are you kidding me right now, Houston? I didn't think that this year would be the Houston Texans podcast, but good Lord, they're continuing to do it in CJ Stroud again. Now, NFL surprise of the week, Chargers. What's going on with that team? They are 4-6 overall. What's happening this year?
I hate to say it. I really, really hate to say it. I mean, we've praised him in the offseason, and we praised him in the beginning of the season. But this might just be the Kellen Moore effect. You know what I mean? This might just be a lack of production on offense because I think they only put up 20 points against the Green Bay Packers, who, in my opinion, are probably not the best defensive unit. You know, injuries, they play a huge part in it, but Keenan Allen went off. You have someone there. You have Austin Eckler in the backfield. And you have Justin Herbert, who is an absolute fiend. There's no reason you should be losing these games in the manner that you should. They missed like a wide open touchdown that would have had them win the game, but it's just one of those plays. You can't just say that that's the reason they lost. There's a lot of other plays that can be counted, but it's just not good. You know, their defense isn't playing well either. It's not just all on Kellen Moore on the offense. Their defense should be a top unit in the NFL. It's not. They have gone out and gotten big guys and big draft picks and big players in the past couple years to improve that defense. They haven't worked out. You know, Khalil Mack had that like 6-sack game or whatever, and that's all he's done. No offense, but like, I mean, J.C. Jackson went back to New England because it wasn't working. So I don't know. You know what I mean? I think they have all the pieces in place, but it's just not working. They're not producing like they should be. And funny enough, that kind of sounds like the Cowboys when we talked about them last year. So Brandon Staley was clearly frustrated after that Packers game, and he should be. You know what I mean? They should be better than they are. They have so many good pieces on offense and defense, but they're just not working out. What does that mean? It might be a coaching decision. You know, it might be a change in coach because maybe it's a locker room issue. You know, maybe it's a coaching thing. Maybe it's a morale thing. I don't know, but something needs to change around there, and unfortunately, it might be Brandon Staley. I don't know if Kellen Moore is going to take his leave. I don't know if the DC is going to take his leave, but they got a hell of a roster. But they just can't win games. They're just not winning the games that matter. These close games, they're losing them. So maybe it's a culture thing. Maybe you go out and get a new head coach who can change this program, who can change this franchise. But I don't know, man. I don't know. What do you think about it? Because I don't know.
I think you brought up a lot of good points, and I think the main point is execution. Yeah. I think they don't execute when they need to, and when you're losing against how many one-score games have they lost this year? If you're in the bottom portion of the league and you're losing one-score games, usually your record's not that great. Mm-hmm. And that's the reason that they have a negative record right now, right? That's why they are literally 4-6. In my opinion, that should be switched, if not even 7-3 with the games that I've watched them play. They just don't execute. And in times when they need to execute, they don't. And, you know, you can't go out and play a stinker like they did against the Cowboys. You just can't do that. When you have this good of a roster, like you said, what are you doing? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I understand that Mike Williams is hurt right now, their star wide receiver, but you have Keenan Allen, and you just drafted the kid out of TCU, Quentin Johnson, who was everybody was saying was number one wide receiver coming out of this year's draft. I personally didn't think so, but there's no excuses. And you have a new offensive coordinator, and now there's really no excuses. And you got a lot of these defensive guys, and you brought in J.C. Jackson, like you said. There's not really a whole lot of excuses to go around with the roster. So it's got to be the coaching. Something's got to give on the coaching side. So maybe a change of pace, change of culture there would do them some good. I don't know if they'll fire him in the middle of the season. I don't think they will. But next year we could potentially see a coaching change there. Take me through the Browns recap because you're Cleveland, and right now, you know, you called it out earlier briefly, 7-3 record. Just take me through Cleveland these last couple weeks, because obviously I've been watching the games. We were together this weekend, but Cleveland's a fun football team to watch.
Yeah, dude. I think they're absolutely a fun football team to watch. I mean, how many teams in the NFL do you know that are starting their second string running back and second string, well, let's say second and third string quarterbacks and are 7-3 in the NFL? Like that, and have a chance for the division lead nonetheless. So Cleveland, they're doing something right, and I think that something is the defense because since week one I've been throwing stats out. I don't have any today, unfortunately, but I do have that they beat the Pittsburgh Steelers 13-10, which is it's a defensive matchup, and they held the Pittsburgh Steelers to 10 points. Now, the Steelers just fired Matt Canada, so it's not really a big win, I would say, on that side. But their
It's
offense,
a division opponent.
It's a division opponent, and it's a game. No offense to the Cleveland Browns, but it's a game you usually lose because it's one of those things. Mike Tomlin is one of those guys who wins against the Browns, and if you're a Browns fan, and it hurts. But this was a sweet win, because they did everything that they needed to do. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, the rookie that they started, he played decently well. He wasn't lights out. He wasn't going out there and throwing dimes like DeVito over in Giants land, but he played enough to win. I will say on that final drive when they went down and got the field goal, he was poised. He looked really good, and he made some huge, huge throws, a lot of them to Njoku, and just a lot of really, really nice passes. So when the Browns get Deshaun Watson back, I guess next season, where it's going to be a whole different story. But for right now, they're rolling with rookie quarterbacks and PJ Walker over there who didn't do so great, but he's winning. They're winning. That's the important part. It's not pretty. It's very, very ugly, but that's what defensive games look like. So their defense is top in the league, one of, I would say, at least top three, because they are just doing this to almost anyone. And they're winning football games. That's the biggest thing. The bottom line is they're 7-3, and they could win the division, which is absolutely insane. Because they lost. Like I said, they lost their starting quarterback and their starting running back, who was one of the highest paid coming into the season as a quarterback, and Nick Chubb was one of the best running backs in the NFL last year. So it's a weird feeling, honestly. I don't know. The AFC is a strange place because we all thought it was going to be amazing, and then there's injuries and stuff like that, and so these unsung heroes are coming out and they're showing out. So Cleveland, good job to you. I just hope you can keep it up.
It's a fun team to watch if you like defensive football. Couldn't have said it better myself. Now jumping to, we got Week 12 matchup preview and picks. Tanner, go ahead and update the listeners with the results from the previous week. This one it's getting a little out of hand. We'll say that it's getting a little out of hand, and I'll let you take it from there.
I don't think it's getting a little out of hand. I think we both did pretty decently well. We both went positive. Both 3-2. That was pretty nice, and now we're tied again at 31-20 overall in the season. It's almost like we came from the same mother. We got a lot of the same genes in us, and we think very similarly when it comes to football. So 31-20, I'd say that's pretty good. Overall positive record. At least we're not negative. But let's move on to this week's picks, and I know we got a lot of them because we missed some last week.
We got a ton. We're going to start it out. We're going to hit the Thursday games, the Friday games, and the Sunday games. Oh, and there's a Monday game in there too. So we're gonna hit all of those. We've got 8 games. Not every Sunday game. We'd be here for 17 hours. We don't want to do that. Thursday morning. For me, it's the morning. I'm on the West Coast. Packers versus Lions. Short and sweet. Lions are going to continue that streak. They're going to get one game closer to 10 wins. The Packers are so inconsistent, and Jordan Love is so inconsistent this year. They could show up one week and score 28, or they could show up one week and score 3. So I'm going to take the Detroit Lions with confidence this week, and I didn't expect those words to come out of my mouth for a while, watching football for as long as I have. But I got the Lions. Who do you got?
The Lions are fun. I've been spouting their name all year. The offense, they're going to keep rolling. The Green Bay Packers, despite beating the Chargers, who are a mystery of a team, I don't think they're that great. I think that defense has a lot to learn when it comes to, in match and just things in general. But the Lions are going to keep over their dominance. I think they're going to win this division with ease. No offense, but there's not a lot of other options, especially since Kirk Cousins went out. But give me the Lions. I think they beat them last year too. Have they played this year? Is this the first time they've played?
I mean, for the Lions, they're hoping it's the first time they've played this year. I'm not sure if they've played this year already. The division matchups, I mean, they got to play them twice, but I'm not 100% sure on that one. But to be honest with you, the Lions at the beginning of the season, I know they beat the Chiefs, and they've only lost a couple games. But there's only been 2 games this year, and those are the games that they've lost where they've actually looked like human. You know what I mean? So I'm going to pick that team way more. You know what I mean? Way more.
What was the other? Because they lost to the Chiefs. Who else did they lose to?
No, the Lions beat the Chiefs.
No, yeah. They lost to the Ravens, I mean.
Oh.
And then who was the other team?
I can pull up their record real quick. But no, with the Lions, I mean, I think the big thing is with them is it's just that you were talking about locker room and everything earlier. That's like I feel like the sickest locker room to be in this year. You know what I mean? With Dan Campbell back there, like watching him after they win, it's absolutely insane.
Yeah, I feel like
they've been in a lot of close games this year. Going back and looking at their schedule, so that's preseason. They beat the Chiefs by 1. They barely beat the Giants. Yeah, I mean Seahawks.
They lost to the Seahawks. Really?
They lost to the Seahawks on September 17th in overtime.
So that was like the second week of football.
Yeah, after they had just like beaten the Chiefs. So it's like, okay, you get that one. You know what I mean? Like you get that one. So they're the second best team in the NFC, and I'm not going to pick against them unless they're playing the Eagles or they're playing the Cowboys, which is happening, by the way. The Cowboys and the Lions play New Year's Eve weekend on Saturday. They're the only Saturday night games. So let's go. I can't wait for that one. It's going to be a blast. I'm going to be back in Texas for that one. We're going to be watching it in the Cowboy game room. We'll give you another podcast where you can see the game room. We got a lot of good feedback on that one, including fans that weren't Cowboy fans. Speaking of the Cowboys, I'm going to let you pick this one first. Everybody knows who we're picking. But afternoon game on Thanksgiving, it's the Cowboys, and it's Washington. Who do you got?
Give me the Cowboys. I think it's pretty obvious, but I do think it's going to be a closer game. I think, you watched that Carolina game this past week with the Cowboys, and it didn't look great for a while. I think it was like 10-7 for like the longest time, or 10-3 or whatever it was for the longest time. And the Cowboys just really didn't get going till the end. So I'm going to take the Cowboys, but Sam Howell is playing really well. He's up there with passing yards in the NFL, and that's something you really like to see from a rookie. And so it's like, I think he can do it against this Cowboys defense. I don't think it's going to be, majorly insane what he's going to put up numbers-wise, but I think it'll be a closer game than a lot of people are expecting. So give me the Cowboys, but give me like a 4-point, maybe 5-point win over the Commanders.
Yeah, and by the way, old Sam Howell technically is not a rookie. This is his second year. He just did not play at all his first year.
Oh, so Patrick Mahomes effect, yeah.
Exactly. So pretty much a rookie, but not really. You know what I mean? Anyway, you nailed it. You nailed it right on the head. This kid was literally leading the league in passing yards. He was number 1, and C.J. Stroud was number 2 a couple weeks ago. So clearly, this kid knows what he's doing, and he's probably going to be the quarterback of the future for Washington, unless it's like a Jameis Winston situation where he somehow leads the league in yards, and then next year as like a free agent, you're like, wait, how did that happen? But he's got 2 years left on his deal, if not more, because they might have, I don't know if Washington took him at the end of the first. I want to say beginning of the second, so they don't pick up the fifth year options on him. So he has 2 more years left on his contract, but there's a really good team in the NFC. Their name's the Eagles. And who gives them the biggest fit when they play? Washington. Mm-hmm. Washington plays the Eagles so well. Giants, not worried about, specifically Cowboys. Eagles, obviously, going to be worried about if Cowboys. Washington, not necessarily worried, but on the exact same train as what Tanner's saying. This is going to be a closer game than a lot of people think. I know Dak Prescott these last couple weeks has been balling out. Once again, regular season Dak, we knew this was going to happen, but you've got a Washington team with a quarterback that is playing at a high level, and you've got a wide receiver that is prime for a breakout game with Terry McLaurin, and their running back Brian Robinson Jr. right now is playing his best football he's ever played. So this team is hot right now, and you look at their record, it's not necessarily reflecting of what they've done this season, but Washington's a good team looking up and down. Now, let's address the very big elephant in the room. They don't have a pass rush anymore, right? They lost their pass rush with Chase Young and Montez Sweat. So that's my biggest thing. I think Dallas has an opportunity to run the ball. Get ready to the tackles, right? I know it's crazy. It's a crazy concept. I know it's insane, but they have all the beef that they need in the middle. Do not run the ball up the middle every single time against Washington. Do not do that, because Jonathan Allen and Deron Payne are going to eat you alive. And Tony Pollard has proven that he is not a power back. And if there is 1 yard to give, unless he does his patented scramble backwards and get a yard, he's not going to get the yard. So 4th and 1, 3rd and 1 situations look at a lot of play action this week. Schoonmaker's beginning to make an impact out of Michigan, the rookie for Dallas, the tight end. Look at him in the short game. And once again, it's a very, very simple formula. Run the ball with Tony Pollard on the outside of the tackles. Of course, give him a couple inside runs to Zach Martin. We're not going to shy away from Zach Martin ever, but maybe on the outside of Zach Martin, toward the tackle, not on the inside, toward the center, Dallas. I just had to bring that up. Sorry, it's been my gripe this whole season with the Cowboys. Continue to give the ball to CeeDee Lamb. This defense gets better week over week, and I want to see this defense have a game against Washington, because this is a kid that they can shake that confidence, I think. And I think that's what they're going to do this week. So we'll see what happens. Obviously going Cowboys. Jumping to the next matchup, this one's a good one because they always play each other so freaking hard. The 49ers and the Seahawks. Tanner and I had the blessing to go watch the Seahawks in person, and I have a sick video of the DK Metcalf touchdown that when he got it, potentially could have freaked out a little bit. Rams fans around us were a little confused. You know what I mean? They didn't know who we were going for, right? You had the blue shirt on. I had the Angels jersey on. You don't know who we're going for. But here, Brock Purdy's playing pretty well.
Yeah, he is.
Brock Purdy's playing pretty well. And sometimes when your quarterback is in a bit of a slump, it's easy to potentially go, I'm not sure. But pretty sure. No, pretty sure. You know, Brandon Ayuk's getting going. George Kittle's starting to get going now too. CMC, he said it himself. He sucked. He didn't score a touchdown that 1 week. And then he just continues to do insane things all the time. But Debo, you know what I mean? Trent Williams, just continue to name the names. And then all of the players on defense as well. Too much firepower. Give me 49ers, especially with Geno being a little bit shaky from this previous week.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go 49ers as well. I think it's just, like you said, Trent Williams is back. Debo Samuel's back. They've got all the weapons that they need to succeed. And Brock Purdy is finally playing better now that all of his players are finally back. So I really kind of think back to the that matchup in the playoffs we saw last year with these two, and the Niners just kind of rolled the floor with them. It wasn't really close. So I think it's going to be kind of a really similar situation. If Seattle can go down and score at the rate that the Niners can score, yeah, I think it's going to be a close game. But I just don't see that happening. Like you said, especially with Geno being a little shaky after coming out last week in that game. And they just also lost their number one running back, Kenneth Walker, who, from what I've heard, is expected not to play this week because it is a short week. So give me the Niners. I think they're probably going to win by a little bit, probably maybe 2 scores, because I just don't have a lot of confidence in Seattle right now. They're not playing their best football. The defense looks a little shaky as well. So give me the team with stability in the Niners over the shaky Seahawks.
Not a bad take at all. And watching the Rams game in person last week with the Seahawks with you, you saw how shaky that defense was, and that's a Rams offense that is not as good as the 49ers offense on
without
pretty
Cooper
much.
Kupp too, so.
Cooper Kupp wasn't playing most of the game. It was really all Puka Nacua. And that's a good take. I'm obviously also taking the 49ers. Jumping to the Black Friday game this year, Tanner, your favorite team is back on primetime. The Jets, baby, against the Dolphins. Who you got?
Give me the Dolphins, and this one's going to be short and sweet. I mean, they finally benched Zach Wilson. It's about time. No offense, guys, but it's not great. I literally saw him trip over his own feet the other game. That was a little rough. I don't think the MILF Hunter is going to be coming back in. So give me the Dolphins. I think they're going to destroy the Jets just because Jets have a good defense. Don't get me wrong, but they're going to have a lot more opportunities to score, and Tyreek Hill is impossible to cover. So
it's not a bad take at all. Did Zach Wilson? We've been saying the thing the whole season. He's just not the guy. He's just pretty obvious. Maybe he is somewhere else, but specifically in New York, he's just not the guy. And when you can't give the ball to your number one wide receiver, Garrett Wilson, ever, it's not going to work out. Yeah. And Garrett Wilson's going to be there a lot longer than Zach Wilson's going to be there. And you saw how good he was in the preseason, how good he was last year, and you just see the frustration piling up game over game over game for him. So I'm excited there's a new face back there, especially being a fantasy owner of Garrett Wilson and knowing how good of a player he actually is and how many times he's open and how many times if Zach would have just thrown the ball anywhere near him, he would have gotten it. Because of how nasty of a route runner Garrett Wilson is. So give me the Dolphins as well. But the biggest thing I want to talk about with the Dolphins is that they're known to kind of slip off at the end of the season. The second half of the season, their play tends to go down. They tend to start off extremely hot, which is what they did this season. And you've seen these past couple of weeks where the play has started to go down. Yes, they've gotten wins in some of those plays, but that's my biggest thing. I don't think the Jets are going to test it this week, but when you have Sauce Gardner on Tyreek Hill, there's always a potential opportunity, for some interceptions there, right? And Tua loves to just sling the rock, but who can Sauce keep up with Tyreek? Sauce is the best corner, in my opinion, in the NFL, but, how do you keep up with Tyreek unless you're playing 15 yards off of him? You know what I mean? How do you do it? But once again, just maybe being a couch warrior.
I'd like to mention, too, that the guy they're putting in, Tim Boyle, has not played well in the NFL. He has played before. He's not a rookie. And current stat line in the NFL over his entire career is 3 touchdowns to 9 interceptions with 50.9 passer rating through all that. And he's played in 18 games. So I don't know. He hasn't even won a game. He's 0-3.
I don't even know if you're saying there's a chance.
Well, in the games he's started, he's lost all of them. I don't know about the games that he's played in specifically, but it doesn't look good. He hasn't been above 75% completion percentage ever. So, which is, 75 is pretty good, but that was for 3 games played where he completed 3 passes. So, out of 4. So, there's not a lot of hope here for Jets fans, but hey, you never know. Dolphins got Jalen Ramsey and Xavier Howard, so looking pretty good for a young quarterback.
Good luck. Good luck, Jets. Good luck. Hopefully you have a good Thanksgiving. We've got Sunday morning game, a lot of running. And this is, I think, the best matchup because it's pretty much the only positive record on Sunday morning going against each other. We've got a whole lot of toilet bowls going on. No disrespect to anybody that's playing Sunday morning, but there's not a whole lot of positive records going there. Anyway, Jaguars in the Texans. This is a good one. You know what I mean? I think this is going to be a good one. CJ Stroud has done everything that he's needed to do. He's done everything. Now, the Jaguars kicked the crap out of Tennessee last week. Tennessee's not that great of a football team, but that is the exact game you wanted going into whoever is winning this division between these two teams. Because the Jaguars were hitting on all cylinders on offense, and their defense looked really good. The Texans have not slowed down on offense. The Jaguars' defense, I don't know if they're going to slow the Texans down on offense. I really don't. But here's my thing. Trevor Lawrence is tired of hearing that he's not the best quarterback in that division. He probably doesn't even listen to rumors or listen to online stuff. But maybe, hey, for the sake of this podcast, that's what we'll say, right? I'm actually going to go Jags on this one. I'm going to go Jags on this one because I think CJ Stroud, he's got to have a blip. You know what I mean? He's just smooth sailing right now. These last couple weeks, something's got to give, right? Something has to give. Or that could just be me, the football fan in me, just wanting the Jaguars and the Texans to just go at each other for however many years down the road because you've got these young quarterbacks and these young teams, right? Like, this is the division for the next 4 to 10 years if these quarterbacks stay here. This is the division, these two teams. So give me the Jags. I'm going to go Jags. Who do you got?
I'm going to go Texans. I think CJ Stroud continues his winning ways, and I think it's kind of funny that you mentioned CJ Stroud, that he's got to have a blimp somewhere because he is a rookie quarterback. And I think it's funny too because Trevor Lawrence, he's been kind of mediocre this season if you've been watching him. And the blip was this last week where he played really well. So it's kind of like it's like a a tale of two worlds when it comes to these two. So I'm gonna take the Texans. They played earlier in the season, and the Texans absolutely demolished them. And I'm not sure. I have a lot of confidence even after that last week against Tennessee. And Tennessee's just not a great football team. I think Houston's defense and overall team is just better than Tennessee's. So I think it's going to be a close match. It's going to be a divisional match, but I think Houston's going to take it in the end. And I think CJ's just going to – I don't think he's going to have insane numbers again, but I think he's going to get up and going. I think he's going to play pretty well, and I think this Jags defense is not one of the best passing defenses in the NFL, so look for them to, air it out a lot, and it's going to be really competitive. I don't know if I trust Trevor Lawrence enough to put up the points when it matters, because when you've seen it this season, it's just kind of like, okay, we're getting down the field, stall out on a drive field goal. And it's like, we're getting down the field, stall out on a drive field goal. They can get down there, they can get into the opponent's territory pretty well, but they just can't finish off drives. And that's what the Texans do really well. They're a big play team, and they can finish off drives, and they can put up points. So I like the Texans. It's hard trusting in a rookie. It really is, especially with C.J. Stroud playing as well as he is. It's kind of like this is an absolute trap game for the Texans if you think about it. But I think they're going to continue. I think they're going to play well, and I think they're going to win.
If Tank Dell has over 100 yards, it means CJ's probably hooping again. So, give me the Texans in that case. But just for sake of argument, I'll go Jags. And because my take in the beginning of the season was this was the Jaguars division, and I can't be going back on my word already. You know what I mean? I can't be doing that. I'm a credible sports source, RDH Sports. Come on. You know what I mean? Sunday afternoon, we've got another hell of a matchup. But before we talk about that, real quick plug. RDH Sports Podcast. We're on YouTube, Spotify, Spreaker, and other sites too. We're getting on Apple very shortly here per request from fans, but really catch us on YouTube and Spotify. We do a weekly sports podcast, mostly about football. When it's the off season, we are really big into the off season. So all of the NCAA athletes, and we really dive into other sports as well: basketball, hockey, soccer. Everything. Even golf and UFC. I do jiu-jitsu a little bit over here, so. Every now and then I'll throw in some MMA talk. You know what I mean? I got some MMA friends too. They listen to the pod, so why the hell not? But anyway, RDH Sports, check us out on YouTube, Spotify, and then if you really are a big college sports person, we have a website, rdhsports.net, and I post all of my articles that I've posted. So this year I'm expecting about 30 pages for this upcoming NFL draft. I usually hit 25 to 35 pages. I've gone as many as 40 pages of prospects. Got about 100 prospects going to be coming at you this year again. So all that's going to be starting here in a couple months. But just had to plug us real quick. You know what I'm saying, Tanner?
You love it. You'll love to see it.
Got to. Now, back to football, back to the matchup, Bills versus the Eagles. I'm doing another crazy pick. Bills.
Is that it? That's your whole pick,
Bills. I'm taking the Bills.
Why
am I taking the Bills? I don't know. Because I didn't take the Texans. I'm kind of mad at myself for not taking the Texans a second ago, so I might as well just double up. You know what I mean? No, here's my thing. The Eagles should not have won that game. You will not convince me otherwise. Kansas City quite literally dropped a wide open touchdown with 40 seconds left. Would the Eagles have gone down? Would the Eagles have gone down and probably tied that game and or won that game? Maybe. But Kansas City leads the league in drop passes. You saw it last week. Mm-hmm. The Eagles, personally, I don't think they looked that great that game. I understand that Kansas City is that good of a football team, but Kansas City was up 10 points on them, and they stalled, and they stalled, and they stalled, and they stalled. Then they had a big play by Swift, and then they stalled. You know what I mean? That's kind of what the Eagles were doing. So it brought up a lot of questions to me. Also, here's the big thing. The Chiefs were lining up Chris Jones as a defensive end. He's a defensive tackle, arguably the best defensive tackle behind Aaron Donald, number one and number two. It's not a case for anybody else between those two. And Chris Jones has been doing it for a long time. He was out week one. He sat out because they didn't give a contract. They got destroyed up the middle by David Montgomery. He was there next week. And he's doing it again this past week against the Eagles. He wreaked havoc in the Super Bowl, and he did it again this past week. Now, I've never seen the Eagles' offensive line look as shaky as they did this last week. I have not seen that from these Eagles these last couple years. They looked shaky, dude. And they also are missing a key piece of Jalen Hurts, and that is Dallas Goedert. And you are seeing it. You had A.J. Brown, who didn't have that great of a game, and you had Devontae Smith, who had a pretty decent game. One of the nicest overhead catches I've ever seen in my life. How you slow your body down and not lose the ball running into the defender, I will never understand. The Slim Reaper, I wish you weren't an Eagle because you're just – I wish, you know what I mean? Same with Jalen Hurts, I wish. But I think you see the holes in the Eagles. I understand that's crazy to say because they only have one loss, but I think you see the holes in the Eagles. And I think that the Bills are pissed. And I think that Josh Allen, he's due for a good game. And that's crazy to say, but he's due for a good Josh Allen game. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. The Eagles' defense is nasty. I understand that. But there's injuries everywhere on that defensive side of the ball. There's injuries. Now, they've come back from a lot of those injuries, but here's the thing. If the Eagles go out and beat the Chiefs and the Bills, then there's not a conversation for the rest of the season who's going to win the NFC and who's the best team in the NFC. For me, it's not. It's not there.
Yeah.
Even if Dallas beats them, it's not there. It's the Eagles are done. So this is a Dallas fan in me hoping that the Eagles take an L this week, because if they don't, Dallas isn't going to catch them. The division is pretty much theirs, and most likely Dallas is looking at a wild card spot, because if you don't lose against the Chiefs and the Bills, who the hell are you going to lose against? So yeah, you know what I mean? So that's kind of why I'm going Bills. That was more of my explanation. So tell me why you got the Eagles.
It's just. I mean, it's hard for me not to go with them when they keep winning in the ways that they do. You know, it's ugly football, but they keep winning games. They keep finding a way to win. And the Bills 100%. Don't give me much confidence right now. Josh Allen has been playing, all season. He has a lot of frustrations with Stephon Diggs, and it's just like not getting him the ball, not getting him enough touches. And Stephon Diggs is a guy you need at least 10 targets a game for. So it's like, I don't know. At least. So it's like, does that happen against the Eagles? Probably not, because where are the Eagles going to cover? They're going to put Darius Slay on Stephon Diggs, and they're probably going to put another guy on him too, because he's that good. So I don't expect him to have a breakout game, Diggs. And that being said, I don't really expect Josh Allen to have a huge, huge game either, because he's lost to good defenses. Philly hasn't been like the best that they've been in previous years, but it's still Philadelphia. They still got an insane pass rush. And anyways, welcome back. We had some technical difficulties, and that's all I'll put it at. But to kind of finish up my point, I think it's just hard for me to have a lot of trust in Josh Allen with the way he's playing. I feel like he's almost averaging like an interception a game. I feel like he's kind of trying to do too much at some points. He's winning games. Don't get me wrong, he's playing well, but I just saw a Philadelphia team that took down the Kansas City Chiefs. Like you said, they should have and probably could have won that game, but it's just hard for me to pick anyone other than the Eagles right now, because I think they're just winning football games, and the Bills are looking a lot shakier than they should. There's a lot of red flags that go up when I look at the Bills, and there are red flags when I look at the Eagles too, but it doesn't matter because they're 8-1. You know what I mean? So like, I don't know, man. I don't know. I think they're 9-1 actually, but give me the Eagles. I don't want them to win, don't get me wrong, but I just think they're a good football team. I think they're built really well. I think whenever they struggle, they run the ball, and they get a lot of offensive production. And the Bills' defense is missing a lot of key pieces, so it's going to be hard to keep A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith locked down. It's going to be tough to keep DeAndre Swift, who's having a great season, down. And Jalen Hurts is just, they're going to push down the field. I think that offensive line is going to get back right, because no offense to the Bills' defense, who's going to be really rushing the passer? There's not a lot of like really, really big names on there, like you said with Chris Jones. So it's like they don't have a Chris Jones of their own. They have, a bunch of like other pieces that can, collectively as a unit make a good defensive pass rush. But
Vaughn would be the only one. Von Miller would be the only one, but his injury history with Buffalo has been horrendous.
But he's past his prime too. It's like it's not the Von Miller of old.
That contract isn't past the prime. that is not a past the prime contract. But you're right. You know what I mean? Like you see the clear slow play, not slow play, but just regression. I would say. We were the most surprised on this podcast when we announced that literal signing. We're like, wait, what? I thought it was going to be a 1 or 2 year deal, and then he was going to ride off in the sunset because of how much other stuff he does off the field. You know what I mean? How successful he already is off the field too. It's crazy. It's fun to follow all of his stuff. I love all of his stuff, but you do see a little bit of regression in terms of production from what he's done these past couple of years. And when you paid that much money to go to Buffalo, you're expected to be the guy that goes and gets a sack every single game, and that hasn't happened largely in part because of the defensive scheme that's running, and also mainly because of the injury history, specifically with the Buffalo Bills. So every point you made against the Eagles is completely understandable. And, hey, I think that it's a very hard case to make that the Bills are going to win. I know the Eagles are going to be favored in this game, but it's just a feeling I got. So hopefully that feeling actually pans out. Sunday night, we got a game that's a little bit easier to pick personally. We've got the Ravens and the Chargers. Go ahead and start us off with that one, Tanner.
Give me the Ravens. I still think they're going to continue their winning ways. I think the Ravens are they're a good team when they're playing not good teams. It's just kind of one of those things. Interestingly enough, they're playing really well in the run game. You've always seen Lamar Jackson get involved in the run game, but you've never really seen Ravens running backs get like a lot of touches and get touchdowns and stuff like that in the past. So you always see him just run in with Lamar Jackson and do a bunch of RPOs where he keeps it. But no, they're dedicated to the run. Gus Edwards and then Keaton, their other back, who has a speed, absolute speed. They are playing really well in the trenches, and I think that's going to continue because, like we talked about earlier, the Chargers defense has been a little rough, more than a little rough this season. So give me the Ravens. I think you're going to see the absence of Mark Andrews. Don't get me wrong. It's not going to be like the Ravens last week, the weeks previous, but I think they're going to stick to their run, and they're going to play to their strengths, I would say, against the Chargers. And the Chargers, it's just hard for me to believe in them right now. They just lost against Green Bay, who is not nearly as good of a defense as the Baltimore freaking Ravens are,
The Baltimore Ravens are 1,000% going to win this game, in my opinion. If they don't, that will be on the next week for surprise of the week. You know what I mean? It'll be on the surprise of the week segment of the podcast. But my biggest thing with the Ravens and the Chargers is just they have not done anything to give me any sort of confidence, them being the Chargers, and the Ravens have done everything to continue to give me that confidence. And yes, they lost their biggest playmaker, but they can substitute that with read options. It's crazy to say, but when your running backs are playing this well and scoring this many touchdowns in the red zone, clearly the running is working. And what's even crazier is that Baltimore's a run-first team, and you've also seen them this year, aside the exception of Mark Andrews, really run the ball like they've always continued to do. So if anybody's going to lose the tight end, it's going to be, and it's going to hurt, it's going to be the Ravens. But at the same time, Isaiah Likely, it's time to step up, like we said earlier in the pod, and you've still got some guys with Odell and the new kid that you drafted. You've got a lot of really good pieces on that team. Now, jumping to the Monday night game, we have the Bears versus the Vikings. This one is, I think, going to be a little bit closer than a lot of people think, just because, no disrespect to Josh Jobs, but he's not Kirk Cousins. And the Minnesota Vikings this year have kind of underperformed, in my opinion. Now, I understand Justin Jefferson's been injured, so if you would have told me that at the beginning of the season, I would have told you you're not going to win if you don't have Justin Jefferson on the field. The surprising play of Jordan Addison, not necessarily surprising, but the fact he's already being this good out of USC is incredible, and you saw why Caleb Williams used to target him so much last year. And last thing I'll say about this game is that Justin Fields doesn't necessarily look like the Justin Fields we wanted this season. Same with Trevor Lawrence. Both of those players have not taken the step that they needed to take and they were expected to take this year. Justin Fields has been injured. Trevor Lawrence has not. We still got a lot of the season to end, but I'm going to go Vikings on this one just because Justin Jefferson's back as well. And also, the Vikings are actually starting to have some success running the ball with Alexander Mattison. And this Vikings defense is playing pretty decently over these last couple weeks. I understand they just lost to the Packers. But wait, the Vikings just played the Packers?
Broncos.
Right? No. Broncos, that's it. They just lost to the Broncos. But this team with the Bears, to me, is a bottom 5 team in the NFL. And this team with the Vikings is not bottom 5. They're bottom in the NFC, but they're not the bottom 5 in the league for me. So that's why I'm going Vikings against the Bears on this one.
I like it. It's hard to root against Josh Dobbs, you know what I mean? Especially recently, because even in that loss to the Broncos, I think Dobbs played really well. He had 2 touchdowns, I think one on the ground, one through the air, and a really great touchdown play where he kind of extended the play. So he's doing a lot. He's doing the most for the Vikings. And like he said, if Justin Jefferson's back, it's not going to matter. You know what I mean? He's just that guy. You know, it's like Devontae Adams over in Vegas. You know, even though he has had inconsistencies with quarterbacks, he still gets the ball. He still gets touchdowns. Same with Justin Jefferson. He's still going to get the ball. He's still going to get touchdowns. And where do you think Josh Dobbs is going to go? It's going to go to Justin Jefferson. I think he's a really smart quarterback, and I think he knows where he needs to get the ball, especially in those situations. He's been around the league for a long time, and he knows to get the big players, the ball in the moments that count. And I think he's going to target him a lot, and I think you're going to see Justin Jefferson come back. So, yeah, give me the Vikings. I don't know what they're going to do in the run game specifically, but I agree with you. I think the run game has looked a lot better, but it's a survivable offense with Josh Dobbs back there. With the Bears, it's just like they just can't win a game. You know, that's just the story of Justin Fields' career. They're just not winning games, and they're just kind of fumbling them at the end, and they're just not executing at the very end, and like all these mistakes. It's hard for me to pick them. You know what I mean? With all of these kind of, like we talked about earlier, like the red flags and stuff like that, you just see it pop up everywhere. So they were close in that game against Detroit, but they just lost it at the end. They were driving, and then I think there was like a safety at the end of the game, and it was like, what? They weren't even in the end zone. But it's like, give me the Vikings. Danielle Hunter's having a season 2, so he's going to make an impact on the game. So that's pretty much it. Minnesota with the big skull.
There we go. And then out the pod with Minnesota. Any other notes? Are we good to end this thing and wish the fans a happy holiday season?
I think it's going to be a great holiday season, unless you're a Spurs fan, because they're just hot garbage. I think I've watched almost all the games this season, and they've lost by like 20 points every time. It's like, oh, yeah, dude, they got a lead. This is going to be great. And then you look, you're watching, I'm like, man, that was an easy one. Oh, there it goes. Well, that was wide open. Nice. Good job. Oh, there we go. Wemby. Nice. Oh, there we go. Never mind. So it's a little rough being a Spurs fan right now. Wemby's pretty good, but there's not a lot of help around him, and they're still losing by like 20 every game. So, hey, Pop, let's get rid of some guys. Go get some defensive guys, because this is not working. We're putting them up. We're giving up like 130 a game, man. Like, this is not it.
Oh, that's not anybody's answer, but hey, at least you got Wemby, and like what happened with LeBron, they got to build around him. So they're probably going to be in contention for one of those really good lottery picks this year. Hey, maybe they can add a couple pieces. They got to compete with Oklahoma, who has like 20 plus draft picks in these next coming drafts. So that's going to be pretty crazy. But yeah, the Spurs, I tune in to watch Wemby play. Me, I don't claim to be the biggest basketball fan. I'm a big playoff guy in terms of playoffs. That's why, Tanner's on the pod. Tanner's the basketball guy. Tanner's used to play in the band. He used to literally go to these basketball games all the time. Really should have brought him into RDH Sports a little bit sooner. He could have been like college game day type vibe, Tanner just going crazy on the NCAA. But no, I mean, it's very obvious with that team. They're going to double team and honestly triple team Wemby when he gets down into the paint. The center drops all the time for away if he's not already in the paint, to try to literally get to Wemby before he gets there, because he's so long. I've tuned into a couple games as well, but not the most fun team to watch, especially when Wemby's not on the floor. When Wemby's not on the floor, it was more of like a let's tune to another game, and then when Wemby goes back in, I'll kind of go back in and watch that way. So yeah, not the most fun team right now. Not even a little bit. The Lakers aren't looking. We don't need to get into that. Not too bad, but at the same time, we need a little bit more for the potential most or best defensive team in the league right now. Come on, Lakers. We got to jump it up a little bit more. We don't have Braun for that much longer. Anyway, that was another great episode, folks. Thanks for listening. Next week we'll be back with more sports talk and really hitting the ground running on some football stuff. But thanks for the listen. Happy holiday season, and we will see you next week.
Eat so much stuffing that it hurts. Goodbye.